So the sort of agenda for the call is quite straightforward. We encourage people to read over the doc before the call, but in case people haven't had a chance, we'll do a 10 to 20 minute, however long it takes, overview where Andrew and Louise will basically just walk through all of the details of the upgrade, why we're doing it, what benefits there are to apps and nodes respectively, and what the upgrade process looks like. And then, yeah, we'll hop right into a Q&A. Anyone can raise their hand by pressing the ask to speak button or raise hand button. I'm not sure what it's called. And yeah, we'll bring you all up one by one to ask questions and start that Q&A. This has been scheduled for 2 hours, but I don't. We'll wrap things up when we feel like we've answered everyone's questions and we're all satisfied. It doesn't need to last as long as that, and you all have the ability to exit quietly as well if you need to. So yeah, I think we can dive right in.
Awesome guys. So for everyone here and for those who don't know me or haven't met me, I'm Andrew. I am the lead blockchain developer for Pocket Network Incorporated, and I have been kind of leading the charge in the 6.0 milestone since well before, in fact, release candidate 0.5.2.9. In fact, this release has been something that we came up with a while ago that would really help with a lot of different aspects of Pocket Network. And in fact, the release itself was about 70 to 80% code complete when we had to do release candidate 5.2.9 to improve the resource consumption for those of you who were around during that time, which was more of a response to the community, frankly. So we are extremely excited to have this release come out because it's something that not only have we been working on it a long time, but it seems to provide that level of just another major milestone in what we're trying to do here. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the forum mainnet upgrade overview with 6.0. And I'm going to be referencing this doc that Jack put, but also if you notice at the top, I'll be talking about the release notes a lot. Because frankly, that's what a lot of you are going to be using as you upgrade your nodes to 6.0. And the DAO proposal as well is linked at the top, and that's something that, is kind of more of the official proposal that will be going through governance to ensure that we get the proper votes in the proper systematic way of ensuring that this is approved. So again, without further ado, let's first talk about 6.0 at a very high level. Like, what does it offer, without really getting into any nitty gritty. I'm just going to talk in an abstract way at first. It upgrades security in 2 very important Merkle patches, okay? The first of which, I'll go into the details of those in just a second. It provides a higher level of network stability by removing events. For those of you who have done block transactions and those sort of queries, you've noticed that the events were kind of concatenated sometimes. Again, I'll go into those details here in a second. And finally, and this is the biggest one, we changed our codec, our encoding algorithm, from Amino to Google's protobuf encoding. And this is a major milestone because, to my knowledge at least, when I last checked, Cosmos and Tendermint were also migrating to protobuf, and they are not ready yet, but they are also making this change. So this is just a big step in the right direction for a lot of reasons, which I'll go through. Before I start, diving into each bullet point here about why there's the higher level of security in the Merkle tree, the event removal, and then Amino to protobuf, I want to quickly see if anyone on the team, maybe Luis, has anything else to add about this introduction.
No, I think you covered it all. Carry on.
All right, sounds good. All right, so let's start talking about the nitty gritty of the Merkle patches first. Now, in the document that you'll see in the mainnet upgrade overview for 6.0, you'll notice that we broke it up node security or benefits to nodes, benefits to apps, because this really makes it clear cut in the pipeline of who you are as a user. And this ensures that you will actually be able to, see, oh, how, like, why would I want to upgrade as a node, or why would I want to upgrade as an app? But in fact, a lot of these, you'll kind of notice this, a lot of these fixes in 6.0 or features in 6.0 will actually provide benefit just to the whole of Pocket Network from a security standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint, et cetera. So for the Merkle patches, I like to think that it's not just a benefit to nodes or apps. It's a benefit to both. But essentially what it is we actually, for those of you who understand the Plasma Cores Merkle tree we use, our original implementation, when we had the MVP out, we actually had, or excuse me, before, pre-MVP, before we launched 5.0, we actually used to hash in the index in the index sum Merkle tree. And what this would do is it prevented a very niche specific kind of replay attack that really we knew at the time. And by the time 5.0 was released, the protocol version, it seems like that index hashing somehow just had disappeared, meaning that we were no longer hashing the index of the leaf inside of the root for the parent for the parent root generation, and that has that niche specific replay attack that thankfully from scraping the network and to carefully monitoring since we identified this, this has never been exploited. But frankly, it is exploitable, and it's something that needs to be patched immediately. For this, and if you guys aren't familiar with the Plasma Cores Merkle tree and how we are using it, we're essentially using the Merkle tree to confirm that you did the relays that you said you did, meaning your node executed the relays that it claimed it did. And what that means is this vulnerability directly affects the payment of nodes and the consuming of the bandwidth on the app side, meaning that apps could lose service, potential bandwidth service to if this attack was exploited, and nodes that are behaving correctly could get diluted by all of this inflation undergoing through the exploitation of this attack. And that was one of the Merkle issues, the most obvious Merkle issue that we saw. The next Merkle issue that was patched was kind of a simple one. We were using what the Cosmos SDK calls last block hash in order to create the pseudo-random index that you'll select for your zero knowledge range proof. And again, this is that same process of recognizing exactly where same process of locating exactly what relay is supposed to be submitted to prove that you did all of these relays. And if you did all of these relays and you can prove that, that's how we pay you, right? However, the hash that we use, the block hash that's supposed to add that entropy so people can't guess what number is going to be generated in the pseudo-random generation, hence the name pseudo-random generation, was actually n-1 block. And this had everything to do with the simple nomenclature issue, which was last block hash, as our understanding as the current, the last block hash, but it was actually n-1 block hash, meaning that if we're on block 20,000, we were actually using the block hash for 1999, right? Or excuse me, you get what I'm saying. One block before. And that's a pretty exploitable bug, because ultimately if you can do a prediction attack, you will be able to know exactly what is what is you'll know exactly what the index of the relay you would have to select, meaning that it's very exploitable for replay attacks. So that really covers kind of like the in-depth Merkle stuff. I'm sure there's some things I glossed over. There's a lot of like nitty-gritty stuff that hopefully will come up in the Q&A that I'd be more than happy to answer. But too long didn't read. It's mission-critical patches that are about the payment process of your Pocket node and the consuming process of the service or of the applications. So with that, before I go into the next point, again, I'll hand it over to anyone who wants to speak at this time, who's able to speak. All right. So if there's no comments at this time, I'm going to move on to something a little bit more simple as a concept, which is the concatenation of the events. Now, this was, if you will believe it, it was the one line of code that really just kind of changed the whole trajectory of how we process Tendermint events. And it was such a simple fix. If you guys don't know what Tendermint events are, they're events that are emitted when transactions happen. Meaning that if your transaction goes through, let's say it's a send transaction, you'll see several events per single transaction. The events might look something as the following. 10,000 UPocket go to the fee collector. The rest of the money goes to whoever you sent it to. And finally, message send successful, etc. Those sort of events are something that was really a legacy feature from Tendermint that we kind of wanted to hold on to for obvious reasons when it comes to understanding what happened in the blockchain. So you didn't have to regenerate the entire state in order to, from the transactions, in order to understand exactly what was going on with your, when the transaction was executed. Because the transaction doesn't always tell the full story. You have to sometimes derive a few things from the transaction. And that's what the events are for. Now, unfortunately, there was, like I said, one line of code that really just took all the events in the Pocket Core module, for those of you who are familiar with the code base, and just added them all together. Meaning that it obfuscated the entire process of what we were trying to accomplish. You couldn't tell what was going on from during the transaction. You only saw what was going on by the transaction, meaning that you have to pretty much derive from the top exactly what's going on, which is not the best UX. In fact, I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody who was building a block explorer for Pocket, and they were unable to, really see what was going on in between the transactions because of this bug. So what this bug patch is just ensuring that they're not all mushed together so they're easily readable. And this affects two things. We've seen side effects of this in two ways. The first is block transactions. If you query block transactions currently, they are extremely, extremely bloated. You will see event after event after event, especially on the proof and claim transactions. Now, if you see the second way is account transactions. We noticed that we had a lot of issues open for the account transactions, and the root of all of that was that we were concatenating the events so much that it really bloated the transaction of the transaction results themselves, which is held in the transaction database. So with that being said, with all that being said, again, too long didn't read. It's a simple fix that really ensures that we have a maximum readability of the blockchain and an ability to really understand what happened in between the transactions. So before I move on, again, I'll leave it up to anyone else who wants to comment on that just really quickly.
Confirming, this doesn't affect past transactions. So this will carry on from now on, from the moment of the upgrade onward.
Yes, that's a great clarification. So to be clear, when this whole release is a consensus rule change, a series of consensus rule changes, which are broken down in itemized sections inside the release notes, which are linked at the top of the Mainnet upgrade overview document. Every rule change will only come to effect once the DAO has approved the proposal, and then the nodes have accepted the upgrade transaction, and then the upgrade height has passed. Okay, and we'll go into the process of actually upgrading here in a bit. But Luis is completely right when he says that this only affects upgrade height on, right? And that's for every single change here, just to ensure that it's the finality of the blockchain right now is quite true, meaning that every mistake will follow you throughout the history, and then we from the the certain height on, that's when things will be fixed ultimately. Did I answer your question, Luis?
Great clarification. Thank you.
Excellent. And finally, this is the one, I love that this is the third bullet point because I'm the most excited about this one. We changed our encoding algorithm from Amino to Protobuf, Google's Protobuf. For those of you who don't know what Amino is, it's essentially a custom fork of Protobuf that Cosmos did, that embedded inside of both Tendermint and Cosmos, meaning that they modified it so that it'd be easier to modified protobuf so that it's easier to use in Golang. Now, the problem with Amino, besides a lot of resource issues that you can see riddled through the Cosmos and Tendermint repositories, is that it's only for Golang and, to my knowledge, JavaScript. Okay, now that really means that client-side technology and other blockchain clients, network clients, node clients, like for instance built in Python or different languages, is extremely difficult. Because not only do you have to build a matter of fact exact copy of what we did in the Golang client, but you have to do you have to actually create the Amino library to mirror that inside of your whatever language you do. So if it's Python, you have to create a Python Amino, etc. Now, I talked briefly about resources. Protobuf comes with, from our preliminary benchmarking, Protobuf comes with a slight resource increase, but the real value add here is that it's a Google-supported encoding algorithm that is used in everything, like it's our wire language essentially, that is something that can be created through multiple programming languages with code generation, in fact. In fact, our JavaScript team just built our Protobuf compatible release candidate 6 client, and they were actually able to generate a lot of the code based off of the proto files. And that sort of value is something that that I feel personally makes this bullet point like one of the most exciting out of the entire release, even though the others are mission critical. This one in itself, this feature enables us to new heights. It allows us to have much more decentralization and configurability when it comes to you as the user, or you as the application, or you as the node runner. So with that being said, before I really dive into the upgrade process, I want to kind of give the floor up to anyone who has any questions like that can speak currently. And again, we'll do the Q&A of the specifics at the end.
Before we do that, Andrew, I would like to clarify something regarding the client side of the Amino to Proto transition. Me myself personally helped code the current implementation of the Amino JS fork that we're using in our Pocket.js client. And the main crux of the issue, just to share this knowledge with all of you, is the fact that in any blockchain, the way to generate a signature for a transaction it requires you to sign specifically the bytes that conform that transaction, or the bytes that represent this transaction. Different blockchains have different ways of doing this or producing these bytes. But in the particular case of Cosmos and Tendermint-based blockchains, they have to use Amino to produce a byte representation of the transaction that is being signed. For example, if you're sending Pocket to another account, the from, to, amount, and other transaction metadata that is needed for the blockchain to accept this in the finality layer of a block needs to be signing the byte representation of the transaction. And in order to generate that, you need to Amino encode it today. Now with Protobuf, you are able to encode it with the Protobuf format. And as Andrew mentioned earlier, this makes it so much easier on the client side, because all you need to do is take the proto file, use a code generator, and you're going to automatically have all the structures that you need to fill up in order to encode a transaction and subsequently sign it and send it to the blockchain.
Very well said. Absolutely. So with that being said, since we talked about, Proto and Amino, we talked about the Merkle trees upgrades. We talked about the we talked about the removal of events and the patching of events. we'll talk about this a few other specific changes in that change log that affect directly nodes and applications. So for nodes, I'm sure some of the community members here will remember when we had the validator issue, where if you were to completely reset your validator without being jailed first, you would double sign blocks as you make your way all the way up, which we identified as a mishandling of evidence on the Tendermint side. And in fact, it's a well-documented issue that I believe is still open today. We were asked that on the application side. So what that means is that now, if the evidence comes in at a way older height than it currently exists, you are actually able to, or Pocket Core and Pocket Network in the Pocket Protocol actually ignores the evidence completely. It's stored in our evidence DB, but no state changes take effect, meaning no slashing for double sign. And for those of you who are familiar with the first protocol parameter upgrade we did, it was a reduction of that double sign. With this new feature of 6.01, we actually will have the freedom to raise that if we need to increase security. Now, I'm not saying that that's warranted, but I'm saying at least we have the freedom to do so without the worry of anyone who is syncing, who has accidentally reset their entire database and is syncing as a validator and signing blocks that has a derived state that accidentally double signs, on block, let's say 200 or something way far back. That will no longer affect the current state as it did up to this point, right? So in my mind, that's a big plus for nodes. It's not something that directly affects apps, but overall network security is improved. For those of you who are familiar with, and this is a big one, PUP4, it's the 5,000 validators limit that essentially is enabled inside of Pocket Core and inside of our consensus that ensures that we don't have an excess of validators that would cause these peer-to-peer problems that have actually been seen in clean room environment load tests, unfortunately bottlenecked by Tendermint peer-to-peer. And for those of you guys who are not familiar currently, Tendermint is actually going through, or with Tendermint is actually going through currently a major peer-to-peer refactor. It's an ADR in their ecosystem, and it's well documented, and you can follow this. Unfortunately, it seems that they are having to do this because the code base was they said it was their oldest module, and it had not only a lot of code hygiene problems, but implementation issues, as we see past 5,000 validators. Okay, and what do these issues look like? Like, what does the sky falling 5,000 validators mean? It's less about, I don't want to say I don't want to say that with direct confidence the network's going to fail at $5,000. That's not true. It's just we lose confidence that everyone will be able to stay in consensus with all of this network gossip going through the network as they talk to each individual validator and just kind of blast out to all their peers what information is in the transactions and in the blocks. So we had a proposal, an upgrade proposal, to lower the economic incentives for nodes to curb the growth trajectory that we were seeing of our network, because we hadn't really anticipated our network have this ability to scale up so quickly, that the Tendermint ADR proposal might not be ready for us to upgrade to yet. Now, with all of that being said, it's a validator-specific problem, meaning that because validators have to gossip messages, or consensus messages, evidence, they have to maintain these connections more than full nodes would. It is something that a solution that immediately caught our eye was on the fly separation of servicers and validators. And what does this mean? What does this look like? What is a servicer? What is a validator? A servicer in our network is simply a full node that's providing the utility Okay. Currently, they're tightly coupled with validators, meaning that when you stake in the network, you are providing both the validation utility, you are validating a network, you're signing blocks, etc., and you're providing the servicer utility, which ultimately pays you the relay reward, right? Now, the original idea behind all of this to ensure that we didn't exceed the peer-to-peer limits with that enormous amount of validator gossip that Tendermint is currently imposing with their current versions was to just separate the two so that we can have servicing and we can have validation. Okay, and the servicers themselves are going to still be completely full nodes, and in fact, they are going to be validator candidates. And what do I mean by this? So with the new release, in release candidate 6.0, we were successfully able to, with just a little bit of minor tweaking, separate, once we hit that 5,000 limit or whatever the governance param is set to, servicing and validation by stake. Meaning that, by stake amount, meaning that if the validator is staked, like if you have 5,000 validators that are staked more than your node, you will not be a validator. You will only be a servicer until one of those nodes unstake and then you're subbed in. So essentially you can kind of think of it as like a validator on the bench that's only servicing until one of the big boy validators leaves the game and they have to be subbed in. Right, it's the same sort of analogy. Now, I threw out that the current max validator parameter value is 5,000. That can also be reduced and ensure like a high level of decentralization while we wait for this peer-to-peer upgrade that will be through Tendermint, while still maintaining that while still maintaining the security of and confidence that we won't see these persisted peer-to-peer issues that we saw in clean room environment tests. Now, mind you, there's a few caveats here with the whole PUP4 in general. And this, again, this whole conversation's linked in the forum, and it's linked on the mainnet upgrade overview for 6.0 as well, under the 2-node section if you want to read over the entire conversation. But the caveat is that the 5,000 node test was performed with release candidate 5.0. And for those of you who were around back when 5.0 was out, it was not the best with resources. Our Google Cloud provider only allocates us so much resources to ensure that we can actually perform a proper test. So there is a potential that we can still exceed 5,000 validators and our network will be okay. Because at 5,000 validators inside of our GCP cleanroom environment test, we actually saw resource issues because of all what we presumed to be and still confirmed with logs to be all of the gossip at the time between all of the validators. Now, mind, release candidate 5 also had 250 in peers and 250 outbound peers. That sort of, compounding effect could mean that our estimate of 5,000 nodes is quite conservative. But in our minds, the health of the network, the utility of servicing is far more important than achieving, a total validator scale that we might see. However, we do want to achieve that scale. Don't get me wrong, but once Tendermint releases, and we can say with confidence that our latest release can get to this amount of validators. Until then, we keep our validators in a safe number, which is ordered by stake, and everyone else is servicers, and they're providing the service utility. One more caveat on this front is that until our next, and this is something that's going on the roadmap in the future, until we can have offline protection for our servicers, if we exceed 5,000 validators, we have our servicers actually will not be able to be jailed because they're not signing blocks. So you're actually not able to jail those validators on the bench because they really aren't. If they're not signing blocks, how do you know if they're offline or not, right? And there's a slew of good answers to that question, and we have actually undergone a lot of R&D, and we have what we think is a really good solution. I'm not going to throw it out here right now, but a solution is incoming for that. However, in the meantime, what this means is that if you are unable to be jailed, okay, it changes the perception of what you are as a service node. And again, we're only talking about semantics here, because though you cannot be jailed as a servicer, you can also not receive any block reward because you are not proposing blocks because you are on the bench. And for those of you who know the economics of Pocket, a slash right now for being offline, which is generally expected behavior during periods of, let's say, maintenance or any time you need to shut down your validator, is extremely, extremely minimal. A block reward is 1% of all of the relays. Okay, and again, we chop up some of this to the DAO, so I'm not going to throw out the exact numbers, but it's around 1% of the entirety of all the relays that everyone did, plus the fees from every transaction that happened during that block. Okay, that ticket, in my estimation, means that the offline protection, though it needs to happen to ensure quality of service at the most fundamental protocol level, will be kind of offset by the fact that, at least from an incentive standpoint, that you will not be receiving the proposed reward. Okay, meaning that, yes, you are not able to be burned for offline signing. You can still be burned for challenges and other evidence that was produced in consensus back when you were signing, but not for offline signing. Okay, so with that being said, I think I covered all the caveats and the nuances of PUP4 in this conversation, which I may or may not should have glossed over a little bit, but I just want everyone to grasp that the feature of 6.0 here is that we have successfully been able to, with those caveats, separate service and consensus. So for the meantime, the peer-to-peer woes of PUP4 are not there, right? Well, they're there, but we have a timeline, we have a roadmap. It's not something where we need true economic immediate action to our knowledge. And there is a very intelligent plan put out by one of our own about at what milestones we're going to hit to change the economics, et cetera. Again, it's all proposals. It's all open for commentary, and highly recommend anyone to participate in those conversations. So before I move on to the app section, I want to pass it off to anyone else, maybe Luis, who has some comments of something I missed or a clarification, et cetera.
Yeah, you said it implicitly, but I just want to make it explicit. When you said that servicers, those nodes that are staked beyond the max 5,000 nodes or whatever the parameter is set to, miss out on the block reward, they still get their service reward for the relays that they serve. The only thing that they're missing, as you very well said, is the 1% or approximately 1% of everything of every fee that happens in the block. So just to make it explicit, servicers still get paid for servicing relays. It's just the block reward, the block production reward that they forgo.
Absolutely. And for explicit clarity, if you see your funds going up and down, it can only be for a few reasons. The first of which is somebody sent you some Pocket. The second of which is you sent somebody some Pocket. The third of which is you received a reward for relaying. The fourth of which is you got slashed for not signing blocks, which is removed, okay, for just servicers that are not validators after 5,000. The fifth of which is if you received a reward from a block proposal, and that is also removed if you are a servicer only. Okay, did I miss any, Luis? To be clear, there's only that is removed from the equation. The validator specific economic penalties and rewards are removed when you are on the bench validator.
No, that's perfect. I think everything should be covered up, and if anyone has any question, we invite you again to answer them either in the forum or in the or via the request to speak.
Excellent. So for the benefit of apps,
quick. Van has a question.
Cool. Okay. So perfect.
Just real quick, I wanted to confirm that what we're calling the on-the-bench validators, they can be slashed for providing bad information.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. For absolute clarity, for those of you who are not familiar, bad information is what we call a challenge slash, meaning the application challenged you saying, hey, you did not provide the correct information. I had my application set up so that I get the same request from other people. And I have a majority consensus here showing that you provided wrong information. Okay. And that is still, since you are providing service, that is still a completely slashable event. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to move on to the app section. It's
We
a
have
little
another
bit
question
shorter.
here. Andrew, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
I have invited Philip Kambazi to speak. It might be something you need to do on your end.
I had to accept it when you invited me to speak, so.
Invite has been sent. Is there something on your end?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see the invite. Thank you very much for the updates. It's very useful. I appreciate it. In terms of the POP4, there was this suggestion of increasing the DAO part of the rewards to disincentivize the validators. With the changes in 6.0, that's not the case anymore, right? The 5,000 validators will get the rewards as before. Is that the case?
Yeah, so currently as it stands, the PUP4 has a conclusion at the end of the forum that has a proposal that's out there saying that rewards will not be touched until we hit significant volume. And I'm not even sure that that has any real backing. It's a proposal. To answer your question directly, rewards currently will not be touched after 6.0. And as far as I know, there's not a direct plan. Maybe somebody else here who's more. Jack, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we did have a modified version of the proposal. The reason for it still existing and still being needed is while we have the servicer validator separation past 5,000, we still are uncertain about how reaching large scales of servicers will affect peer-to-peer for the servicers in terms of affecting their ability to provide a quality service. So we still want to limit as much as possible the number of nodes within 5,000. So we still proceeded with the suggestion that we arrived at by rough consensus, which was using the adjustment factor curve to effectively gradually transfer rewards from nodes to the DAO as a percentage of the block reward as we approach 5,000. And then when we're confident that we have addressed all of the concerns about servicer peer-to-peer quality, then we can have another proposal to undo that measure.
Thank you. Just to be clear, so it's a proposal stage, and it's not decided on yet.
It has been decided on. Sorry, I should have been more clear about that. It was put to a vote by the DAO and was approved with 6 yes votes and 0 no votes. I have. Let me check. Yeah, so I responded to the proposal with a link to the vote and snapshot, which passed, and the proposal is being closed as a result of it passing. Andrew, do you have anything further to add about the peer-to-peer scalability and the reason why we still needed these measures in place?
Correct. And again, I think I kind of covered it earlier, but it's really just about being conservative, right? Because even though servicers are a lot lighter, it's like peer-to-peer scalability is something that is always on our mind. So as we approach this number in a logarithmic way, if my memory serves me correctly, Jack, we are actually able to slightly curb, but the original, to answer your question, the original proposal was not approved. It was a subsequent proposal that was that went through. Correct, Jack?
Yeah, so the original proposal was by Andrew, specifically to reduce the relays to token multiplier. So basically reducing inflation across the board. Through discussion of about, say, 60 back and forth messages, we ended up iterating the proposal and editing it to change it to be this reducing the servicer allocation by increasing the DAO allocation. So as we approach 5,000, the rewards that would have gone to servicers will instead go to the DAO treasury for reinvestment into the network.
And again, if there's disagreement with the original the proposal itself, you can, since it's not something that'll kick in right away, as we are not close to 5K nodes yet, you can act a separate proposal to reverse the decision. Am I right about that process, Jack? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, anyone at any time who wants to make a certain decision can submit a proposal to the DAO, and the DAO can vote to make that decision. So if new information arises about anything or new concerns arise and the DAO, the voting members of the DAO agree, there's nothing stopping new decisions from being made.
Correct. And in fact, just to add a little bit more color on the peer-to-peer side, we have currently, I don't want to spoil anything here, but there is some kind of general presentations coming out soon about peer-to-peer best practices that might actually enable us to scale up at a higher level with more confidence, even with the current Tendermint iteration. So it's a really a hot it's a hot topic right now that everyone kind of wants to kind of sink their teeth into, because it's affecting the scalability of the protocol extent, especially at the validator level. So once we have the service validator separation, we'll really get to see kind of how the economics of it all is affecting it, and what really everything is looking like from a scalability perspective. And I wonder, my intuition tells me that we might be underestimating Tendermint if done in a certain fashion, meaning that the network currently as it was with 5.0, with 250 in, 250 out, with the resources that it had and the databases that it was using at the time, might not be a good reflection of, and that's the data we're working off of, to be clear, what we did that 5,000 tests might not be the best reflection of the network as it is today. And if there is a lot of discussion and proposal on or contention, I suppose, against the decision of what actually happened, I'm sure that it'll continue. The PUP 4 doesn't end here. The overall discussion will continue.
Quick question, is the 5,000 number hard-coded in, or is that a triggerable number? In other words, could it be lowered to 4,000 without an upgrade?
Exactly. It's a governance param, so you can actually trigger an upgrade just through a DAO transaction.
Thank you.
And that can be raised or lowered, or anything. So.
Sorry, one last question. I don't want to take too much time. This gradual decrease in the rewards, does it account the jailed nodes? Because currently we have more than 3,500 nodes. So the PUP 4 adjustment schedule is already in place. I'm looking at the Google Sheets. So the DAO allocation is already at 30% versus 10%. So the total number is including the jailed validators or not?
No.
As far as the calculations goes, are we at 3,500 or we are, like 2,800 because 700 of those are jailed and they don't count? Which one is it?
So when you're jailed, essentially you don't have to sign blocks. So and again, I'm not the author of the second proposal, but I would venture to say it's live validators.
That's correct. Sorry, this is Adam. I'm just speaking up for PUP4 and the conclusion we came to. It's live validators, or that was the intention if it's not explicitly stated.
Got it. So any other questions on PUP4? I know it's fun to talk about, and frankly, more conversation needs to be had. But this was a big step in the right direction. Just having the ability to 6.0 is a big step in the right direction. Just to have the ability to separate servicing and validation really takes a lot of load off of the peer-to-peer issues.
Just a note on that. I'm sensing that there might be desire to have more discussion, even though the proposal has been voted on and approved. So I opened up the topic again so that if people want to come in and share more thoughts on that, they have the ability to do so now.
Excellent. So with that, I'm conscious of the time here. I want to make sure that that we cover the process especially, but I'm going to quickly talk about the benefit of 6.0 to applications. And again, it's a little redundant here. I don't want to go too deep into it, but essentially with all of the Merkle improvements and all of the improvements to the nodes, you're going to see a higher level of security and stability and more reliability. And something that actually really isn't on this document because it's relatively implicit, but for those, and this will go into the process a little bit, so I don't want to kind of, get away from the point, but those who are running extremely, extremely old versions, everyone will be required to upgrade to 6.0. And with that being said, ignored nodes that are not servicing applications correctly will likely be filtered out, because if you're not paying attention to the upgrades, and you're not paying attention to your relay rewards, you're certainly not providing good service to our application. So there's a big benefit there just in the means of the consensus rule chains in general. In addition to that, the SDK technology I kind of already touched on, but protobuf to Amino, again, just a big plus there. It helps significantly for anyone developing client-side technology to really just use the structures at hand that are code generated through Google's generation algorithm, which is again a big plus. So with that being said, I know I kind of glossed over apps, but really we kind of covered a lot of it in the conversation. Are there any other comments on this?
We had a quick question from Arnaud. Is it improving service for the app? Missed requests, response time for requests, and these sorts of things?
Yeah, so inadvertently it will. And the reason why I can say that with relative confidence is because we've done some tests with the gateway recently to say that then if we filter out the nodes really running really old versions, like let's say some people are still running on 5.0 and 5.1, the latency times that we have been seeing drastically drop. Now, I'm not saying that that is a direct result of 6.0's contents, but it'll be in kind of a side product, a byproduct of the upgrade itself, ensuring that everyone who is a validator and is actively participating is properly upgraded. Not to mention that the protobuf use of evidence does have a slight latency improvement. Now we're talking in the order of milliseconds here, but milliseconds, shaving those off do mean a lot in the long run, especially when you're consistently servicing. So I hope that it kind of answered your question or not.
Yeah, just to add a little bit, and maybe Alex or Luis might be able to add more color. I think a lot of the issues stem from the gateway, which there's been some changes to Pocket.js and the gateway itself over this last week that have massively improved service quality, actually. So a lot of it comes from the gateway side, and I think a lot of it comes from the quality of the nodes that are running as well.
That's absolutely right. And where this upgrade is going to help is the quality of the nodes. Okay, and the gateway, again, it's been internal changes, and we've seen drastic results, as Michael alluded to. I'm sure there's going to be some public information coming out soon on that. But with that being said, we should see, just in general, as the network matures, especially with this upgrade, a higher quality of nodes and a less resource consumption and less latency in the storing and reading of evidence, which is required for every single relay you serve. Yeah, so with that being said, I would like to move into the process now, the actual process upgrade, if no one else has any questions.
I think Ben Van had a quick question.
Just a quick clarification. Is 6.0 going to actually force the old revs off, or is it just the gateway that's filtering them?
So 6.0 will force the old revs off.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of foreshadowing for this process. But yes, for those of you who don't know, the cat's out of the bag. Ultimately, when you are upgrading in consensus, when we have a consensus rule change, we have it's been embedded in the protocol from the very beginning that when the DAO executes a upgrade transaction, if you are running a upgrade before that, your node actually will shut down. And it'll say, hey, you need to upgrade to this node. Because even if, let's say, that functionality wasn't in there, you would immediately have a consensus error as long as 66% plus have upgraded to the latest version. Meaning that as long as 66% plus of nodes accept the upgrade transaction, that's the signal that they want to upgrade. And if 66% have actually upgraded, we will be able to seamlessly transfer consensus without any chain halts as soon as the upgrade height happens. And if you're running an old revision, you will actually see the log that says, hey, you're running an old version, we have to gracefully shut you down. And if you try to restart the old version, it will not let you, it'll say the same log. Now, with that being said, as soon as the transaction is received, a warning log goes out saying, hey, you are running a version less than 6.0, and the DAO and the validators themselves have approved this transaction, and you need to upgrade before this height, and it'll print you the height so you can see the warning. So in general, that sort of removal of old revisions is kind of what I was alluding to with Arnaud's question about just improving the quality of our nodes and our node runners, frankly, because if they're not, upgrading with the network, as we know, we're all in this kind of infant of the network state. It's very, very important at this time to be a good community member and participate and ensure that you are up with the times, because it really does affect the utility of what we're trying to do here, especially in the bootstrap phase, especially because, as we pointed out with PUP4, every validator really does count at this point. And if you are kind of an absent validator, or you're not, you're participating in consensus, but you're very slow and your latency is bad, or you're forwarding to like Infura, et cetera, all of that can, come back to bite you at some point. And really for old revs, this is the time to upgrade to new ones and have a better setup in general, because it does affect both the security and the utility of the network. So let's talk about the process, okay? The first question you're going to get about release candidate 6, like, oh yeah, wow, he just said I need to upgrade. I'm on an old revision, maybe it's 5.1, maybe it's 5.2.9, whatever. I need to upgrade. Can I upgrade right away? The answer is yes. Release candidate 6.0 is currently compatible with the consensus rules as they are today. Now, the new consensus rules are in a dormant state. And what does that mean? It means that they will not come to effect until a transaction goes through and everyone approves the transaction and the height passes. What that height is will, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, because I don't want to step on your toes here. But it will be determined once we have seen significant evidence that we have the numbers to upgrade, meaning 66% plus has upgraded to 6.0. And what that allows us to do is, with a high degree of confidence, not only showing direct evidence that the community supports it and the validators support it because they accepted the transaction, but we will not have any chain halt, any service interruption that we know of, besides some of the old revs being dropped off that could potentially be in previous sessions, right? Or in the ongoing session, excuse me.
Yeah, so ultimately, the decision of whether to upgrade to 0.6 is in the hands of nodes upgrading their own nodes. Once we reach the majority consensus required for Tendermint, which is 66 plus, then the PIP or PIP4 will be amended to include an upgrade height, and that will be voted on by the DAO. And that provides voting members of the DAO with an opportunity to essentially veto the upgrade. Let's say perhaps we discovered there's some kind of issue with the new version, the new consensus rules that we hadn't realized before, etc. Once the DAO has approved the upgrade in general, along with the specified upgrade height, then we're good to go. The foundation will execute that upgrade on the DAO's behalf by submitting the PocketGov upgrade transaction. This transaction embeds the height at which the upgrade will activate. And then when we reach that height, we'll have achieved all of the prerequisites for an upgrade. We'll have 67 or 66 plus consensus. The DAO will have approved the upgrade, and we'll have submitted the transaction, and we'll be good to upgrade without any consensus issues at all.
I can make one clarification, Jack. The way we usually check for the upgraded Pocket Core clients is by checking the V1 endpoint. So if you're running a Pocket Core node and you have everything, every other endpoint shut off, as we recommend everyone to do, only have a challenge, dispatch, and relay open. If you have V1, that's going to help us determine this upgrade easier. So this is a good opportunity to tell all of you that are running nodes today that by opening up the V1 endpoint, that's going to allow us to read the number of validators and calculating their staking power, and we're going to be able to faster see that we've reached the milestone that we need to upgrade the network.
Yep. Thanks for that clarification.
Absolutely. And one clarification on my side, I keep saying 66% of validators. We really only need 66% of voting power, meaning that, not all validators are equal, just like in proof of stake, not all validators are equal in consensus, right? And that's what we're looking for. Of course, we're going to look for more than 67% just to ensure that we really do have a good consensus and so on and so forth. But ultimately, the software requirements is just 66% plus, right?
Not of number of nodes, but staking power. Just
Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to go through the frequently asked questions because
we have
ultimately,
a quick question.
Yeah, we have a question.
This might be in the FAQ, but what happens to the 33% of nodes that aren't yet upgraded when the switch is made? Are they still serving for a while?
Yeah, and that's why I was jumping to the FAQ. That's actually a great question. So if you don't upgrade in time, your node will not be able to continue or service immediately, meaning that as soon as that height passes, you are offline. Now, when is that height? It's still to be determined, right? As Jack pointed out, meaning that it could be if everyone upgrades very quickly and we have good participation and we have the numbers that we need, then frankly, there's nothing really stopping us from going through. But if it doesn't get the numbers quickly, then those running old revs could service for a while longer. But again, as soon as that height passes, you are immediately shut down. You are unable to participate in census or servicing. So with that being said, unless there's a response to that, got it. I will jump through the FAQ, starting with the node section. So we talked about upgrading ahead of time. So what if I'm using a third-party service provider to run my nodes? So we have a very close relationship with a lot of our third-party service providers, and to our knowledge, everyone seems very active and complicit with this upgrade. So frankly, you will actually just allow them to upgrade your nodes, but you can contact them directly and talk to them with their upgrade plan. I know a lot of service providers have already started the migration to 6.0. So that should be taken care of for you. If you don't upgrade, will I lose my pocket? This is an interesting question. You will not lose your pocket more than a jailing slash, meaning that if you have, let's say you're staked for above them, let's say you're staked for 15,000 pocket, the minimum, and then you are slashed because you are no longer to participate in consensus after 6 blocks has passed, just like it works today. That will result in you losing your pocket because you dropped below the minimum stake, and there's that force unstake feature of Pocket Network. However, that didn't the economic rules didn't change there. It's just you are unable to participate in consensus normally would. So other than a general slash and then going into jail like you normally would, that's about it, right? You're not going to lose your pocket in any other way that would be considered abnormal or as a byproduct of the upgrade. If I need more help, where do I go? So, of course, the Node Runner channel on Discord, if you're part of this call, I'm sure you are familiar with. So let's go into the applications frequently asked questions. So what should I do if I'm using the Pocket Gateway endpoint? So to be clear, the Pocket Gateway endpoint is internal through Pocket Network Incorporated, and we are actually going to do that upgrade for you. So essentially no action is needed. But we do anticipate, maybe a slight network instability that could happen due to not everyone upgrading at the right time or at the expected height and having some nodes offline, but nothing more than normal, as the gateway has an embedded fallback mechanism that really shouldn't represent anything more than some increased latency around the time of the upgrade. And to be approximate, if we time it correctly, if we time the upgrade height correctly, we can time it so that the session expires basically as soon as the upgrade happens. But for those who are, still quote unquote validators, but they were old revs, it'll take 6 blocks for them to be jailed, meaning that they will technically be active validators for 6 blocks. And that's when we're going to see the kind of spotty service if we don't have good community participation, meaning that above 95 to 100% of the voting power, right? Which is what we would like to see ultimately. If I'm not using the gateway, how should I upgrade? So Pocket.js has their own upgrade guide, and it has more details in general about direct integrations. To my knowledge, that's either a very small minority or no one. However, there is a slight change with the use legacy transaction feature or signature feature, which ultimately means, and a lot of you node runners probably see this as well, legacy codec versus current codec. Legacy codec is amino, and regular codec, not if you set that to false, not legacy codec, is protobuf. So until we have the upgrade height, all transactions will need to be executed using the quote unquote legacy codec, which is amino. And then after the upgrade height, all transactions will have to use the flag false, which is the default, which is we're using protobuf now. We actually, and I think I might have glossed over this, did a testnet upgrade yesterday, and we were able to successfully get testnet on Proto, meaning that if you are now participating in testnet in any way, shape, or form, you are using protobuf encoding and will get to see the benefits of all of 6.0 inside of testnet. And you will not need to use the legacy transaction feature, whether it be through the JavaScript SDK or your Node run or your Node client CLI. You will not have to do that in any way, shape, or form. I think I exhausted the frequently asked questions. So with that being said, I'm not sure, Jack, if you want to take over here, or if there's anything else you want me to cover before we hand it off to the next portion of the call. But I'd be happy to oblige.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything. We kind of merged, I guess, the Q&A session a little bit with the overview. So yeah, I think we've covered a good amount, but now would be the time to focus on Q&As. If anyone has any questions, I know there's a lot to digest there, but yeah, if there's any questions, just hit the raise hand button or send a message to the community calls channel, and we'll try our best to answer. Getting some questions coming in now. So MXS has asked, if I understood correctly, 0.6.0 will not use the recent brackets unstable refactors or reworks in peer-to-peer tournaments area. Does this imply we'll likely continue to see some stuck nodes from time to time?
Right. So just complete transparency here. The peer-to-peer stuck node issue seems to be related to older versions of people running older revisions. So we're holding our breath, hoping that it disappears, because frankly, we've done an extremely deep dive into this issue, and it seems to be very fundamental to how Tenormint's handling their peer service. And it's related to the Control C issue that we're seeing as well, because the peer service is unable to be stopped. As I mentioned earlier in the call, Tenormint's peer module is their oldest code base, and it's one that they don't have a whole lot of confidence in anymore, and that's why they're kind of refactoring the entire thing. Now, to answer your questions directly, we don't know if it's going to solve the stuck node issue, but there is a chance, right? Because ultimately, from what we can tell, it seems to have to do with peers being in older revisions. But then again, we don't have hard evidence to suggest that this upgrade will fix that issue directly.
Awesome.
We also have to. I also want to point out that as we work with nodes to balance the outbound, inbound configurations, we will start to get a better network topology, which also could be a contributing factor to better peer-to-peer stability as well.
I suppose we're waiting on more questions now, Jack, or?
Yeah, doesn't seem to be any more questions at the moment. While there's a lull, I guess, I will just plug the DAO essentially. I know there's been a couple of comments from people who maybe had doubts about whether PUP4 is necessary, especially in light of the successful separation of servicing and validation. I just want to clarify to everyone on the call, even if you're not a voting member of the DAO, you can share your opinions and make counter arguments to any decisions that are being discussed or considered on the forum. That is completely open. Also, becoming a voting member of the DAO is also open to anyone who goes through Pocket Arcade. Essentially, all that Pocket Arcade is doing is verifying that you are a member, a participating member of the ecosystem, whether you're a node, an app, or a community member. So yeah, if you care a lot about some of these issues and you want to be able to cast your vote on them, then I definitely encourage you to check out Pocket Arcade. There's a very high likelihood that a lot of you have already done most of what you need to do in order to earn a vote in the DAO. It's just a case of reporting that through the Achievement Unlock channel so that we can verify and assign that qualified role to you. And yeah, once you've done that, you'll be airdropped a voting token, and you'll be able to cast your vote in Snapshot. There'll be absolutely no gas costs or anything of that nature on your end. It's quite a frictionless experience. So yeah, if any of you care a lot about these issues, please definitely start to see if you can get your vote in the DAO and weigh in. We have another question now. Arnold from Skills has asked if we could talk about 7.0.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Always looking towards the future. No, this is great. So for those of you who are more familiar with our kind of unofficial roadmap that we've been working on, we have this the next protocol upgrade release planned, and it's almost entirely feature-based at this point. No bug fixes as far as we know. Of course, those will pop up as 6.0 is out there and the need arises. The first feature, and again, I don't want to kind of spoil the surprise too much as the shape of what we're doing, or excuse me, as what we're doing takes a little bit better shape, we'll release more and more details. But from a high level, there's two major features here. The first of which is targeted servicing protection through what we call quality of service checks. And then the second of which is offline signing protection for servicers that are not validators, meaning on the bench validators, right? And I kind of already touched on the need for that earlier in the call, but let's start with that bullet point, which is how are we going to ensure that that nodes who are offline, who are not signing blocks, can get jailed or punished without actually signing anything, right? And without releasing the actual implementation of it. The high level is that the applications themselves will be responsible, or the clients of the applications, if you get what I'm saying, will be responsible for doing the offline reporting. And an aggregation of that data will result in economic penalties. This sort of flexibility for the application allows us to move forward with the separation of service and consensus, or service and validation, with a much higher level of confidence, because our consensus, our servicers will be subject to removal if they are considered, offline. Of course, there is a balance, and there is something where, you have to aggregate enough reports from an application to truly prove, quote unquote, offline or jailworthy, or a jailworthy event. However, that is something that we feel we have the utmost confidence that at some significant number, you will actually be able to, with a relatively high level of confidence, say your node was either offline or your API was unavailable and you were not providing service because you were reported by several applications in a row and verified, or excuse me, several clients of applications in a row, and it was verified with a transaction sent by a subsequent member of the session. So that's the first feature of 7.0, which we kind of briefly touched on the need for in the separation of service and consensus. The second feature is the targeted servicing, and in general, quality of service metric. And quality of service means a lot of things to a client-server application, but in this peer-to-peer world that we're living in here now, it's ultimately what it is we're trying to mirror a client-server architecture through our decentralized infrastructure to enforce like sort of a software-level agreement between the nodes who are providing the service and the applications that are consuming the service. So what does that look like in practice? We take things like latency, which can be reported by each client. We take things like app combos with your nodes, who can be matched up through the pseudo-random selection, and see how often you are providing bad data, which is kind of like the quality of service consuming the current challenging mechanism, for those of you who are familiar with the challenge mechanism of providing bad data. And then lastly, this aggregation of data and seeing who was paired in what sessions and how much relays they serviced based on the capacity that they could have serviced allows us to detect when people are targeted servicing. And what that means is, without getting in the nitty-gritty, essentially servicing more to some particular app or particular node when you're an application because of XYZ reason. It could be because you guys are business partners and you're cahoots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just meaning that we need to ensure that everyone's on a level playing field here to a degree, and the return on your investment for this style of kind of targeted servicing attacks does not really merit much of a benefit, right? And through these quality of service metrics, which really encapsulates the majority of 7.0, it enables us to provide a much higher degree allows us to provide a much higher degree of confident service to our applications, because we know based on our metrics which nodes are servicing quickest, which nodes are servicing the best data, and which nodes should be selected more often in sessions. And which nodes are falling flat, which nodes are always returning errors, which nodes have been reported over time and time again. All of this, which currently is handled on a centralized service, which is the gateway, can be migrated to the protocol to ensure that our node runners are receiving the best rewards when they provide the best service, and our node runners are receiving the highest level penalty when they provide the worst service. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, Pocket Network is nothing more than that utility, which is providing the decentralized infrastructure. And we really are going to fine-tune what exactly we can do with that decentralized infrastructure, and what service level agreement can we provide to our applications. So I know I kind of rambled there for a little bit, but I really hope that encapsulates not only the idea of 7.0, but it gives you kind of these high level details of what we are coming up with next, in the spirit of improving not only the rewards for good nodes, but the service for applications who are consuming our decentralized infrastructure.
And if I might add a few quick things here, I'll try to keep it brief because it's a very exciting upgrade. There's two things that I especially want to mention. The first thing I want to mention is that 7.0 is going to come with a set of dials, economic dials that can be adjusted, so we can cater to the reality of the network at any point in time. So the DAO can become stricter and stricter to meet a proposed SLA parameter. And what I mean by stricter, as Andrew mentioned, there's going to be a cumulative data capture feature, meaning without bloating the blockchain, we're going to be keeping track of cumulative data that is going to allow us to understand ranges of quality of service that are going to be extremely helpful for getting that visibility that people need in order to understand where their node is standing in terms of, compared with the rest of the network, of course, where their node is standing in terms of quality of service, so they can start looking on how to improve and how to get closer to that SLA. So what's going to end up happening is that the DAO is going to have multiple dials that can be fine-tuned in order to make it either more relaxed or more strict for nodes, so we can adjust that SLA dynamically. So you could call it the first social SLA for software infrastructure that has ever been created. So at that point in time, what's going to end up happening is that this doesn't need to be a set thing based on the parameters that we determined day one, because a network like ours with almost 3,000 nodes is going to be very different when there's 100,000 nodes. So what's going to end up happening is that the mechanism QoS as a mechanism is going to be malleable enough so that nodes and apps can work together in order to find that SLA middle point that is going to optimize service for apps, but it will also optimize rewards for the nodes that are providing the baseline service for to sustain that SLA.
And at the end of the day, what this provides is a Darwin-like environment, a social Darwinism-like environment where the top node runners will lead the pack, and those at the bottom, depending on the DAO upgrades and things like that, will fall off, meaning our worst servicers will not be financially or economically sustainable, right? And this is just good news all around for those who are likely in this call, because ultimately, if you're here, you're probably a good node runner and you probably run a highest level degree, and that's what we're looking for, right? We can definitely chop down that, 3,000 validators, 5,000 validators, 10,000 validators. What we want is a decentralized, high level of quality service that we can provide to our applications. So currently, yes, the numbers are, I think somebody threw out 3,500 or 3,000, but after the upgrade and the old revs are kicked off, and then after quality of service is implemented, it is our hope that we concentrate the pool of servicers and validators to those who are providing the highest quality of service in a natural sort of economic fashion, which we think will result from this metric collection, hence 7.0, improving the quality of our utility.
That's awesome. So we have another question from MXS, going back to 0.6, asking if there are a lot of config changes in 0.6. The upgrade notes mentioned to migrate existing configs using Pocket Util update configs.
It depends on what version you're on, but 6.0 does have configuration changes. In fact, one of the biggest and most important changes has to do with the peer-to-peer module, where you are only doing 7:21 ratio, as opposed to the previous, which I believe was 30/50. So, and the peer-to-peer gossip has also been modified. So I would highly recommend kind of scrubbing your config file. Again, I don't know what revision you're on, but you will see some changes in some form or another. If the question is, are there a lot of changes? I don't think there are a lot of changes like there was in 5.2.9, but a significant enough amount that you should always pay attention in between the configuration upgrades, because that really, really will affect things like how well your node does, and will I see things like corruption or getting stuck, etc. And it always is telling when we have support tickets to ensure the first thing you need to look at is your configuration and make sure it's up to date, right? So I hope that answered your question.
I got a question. So the document that was released about updating, is there anything else that new node runners that are just now starting, fresh node on 0.6.0, is there any new steps that might not be in the documentation that you need to be aware of, or new configs that you need to be aware of? Or is everything all the same except it's just, a different, you're just pulling a different version?
So by new node runner, I assume you're saying this is the first time entering the network. Is that the question?
Yeah, this is a fresh node. This isn't converting an old node. This is a completely new node.
Actually, your upgrade process will be even more seamless than those converting, because your data directories will be brand new and fresh. You won't have to worry about converting an old configuration. I would actually say new nodes are much easier to start than the upgrade process, which is always a little clunky for reasons like the session database or changes to the Pocket Evidence DB, as we've seen. So I don't think that there's going to be a big issue there for new node runners. However, if there is, we'll be sure to come with quick documentation following about any instructions that might not be clear. But to my knowledge, Shane, no, there's nothing there.
Cool. So essentially, once if you start a new node with this newest version, there's nothing you have to do. You're basically set until the block height happens. You don't have to make any configuration between when you start your node and when the official change happens on the network side.
No, that's the beauty of 6.0 release. It's backwards compatible completely. So if you actually are a new node runner with 6.0, you won't even realize that there was an upgrade at that height. And that's what the user experience we wanted to provide to node runners.
Does that answer the question, Shane?
Yeah, it did. Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So we have another question, a few other questions actually. There's one regarding 0.7. There's a few about 0.6. So I think we should maybe cover the 0.6 ones first, and then we can go back to 0.7. So Amish Batman has asked, can we stake with legacy codec set to false right now?
Mainnet legacy codec will have to be true right now. If you're a testnet, it would be false, because the upgrade has already happened on testnet.
Great. The next question is, okay, I think we can go back to 0.71. So there's a question for Andrew. Is the quality metric described for 0.7 cumulative? To elaborate, does the system forget past performance, or does it increasingly reward nodes that achieve 100% service over a longer period of time?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea here is to reward those who have a good history. Meaning you can think like the analogy we used during the development, and we're still using because, again, this is still being developed, is a credit score, right? And over time, as you build better history, we have a higher level of confidence in you as the node. Meaning that if you unstake and change identities, change addresses to try to skirt the penalties, for instance, and things like that, our mission is to ensure that the rewards, the return on your investment for maintaining your identity and providing good service is far greater than any attack that you could potentially get away with, right? So I hope that answers your question. Just to read over it one more time, it sounds like, is it cumulative? Yes. Does the system forget past performance? No, it does not. When you unstake, your validator is deleted, so that is potential. But ultimately, we haven't really talked about unstaking nodes. Nodes who are unstaked, does their performance disappear? I would think not, but I don't want to speak on behalf of the entire blockchain team and the protocol development. Do rewards increase? Does it increasingly reward nodes who achieve 100% service over a long period of time? Yes, it will. Awesome.
Can I ask a question on 7.0? Is the proposal, or the, I guess, GitHub request for an unstaking address, secondary address, is that in 7's roadmap? If not, who do I have to kill to?
So that is a good question. I know that in addition to the update stake functionality, update stake functionality is in. It's for 7.0. However, that issue you talked about, which has gotten a lot of support, is not officially in, but hasn't really been talked about or debated on. So I would recommend doing a proposal just to push it forward. I hope that answered your question. We really didn't talk about it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll do a proposal and see if I can light any fires. It is and from my point of view, a critical security issue. Thank you.
Excellent. And a lot of people would agree with you, right? So with that being said, I think in general, guys, for these, protocol upgrades like 6.0, most of the features were generated internally. However, all of the features were debated publicly through the proposal, or that's supposed to be the process, right? So if you ever have a feature, like for instance, the update stake functionality, which is something that's a highly debated topic, or for instance, Sean had opened up a GitHub issue, it seems like forever ago, about the operator address for a security flaw. All of that, those sort of things can be introduced into the consensus rule changes by creating a governance proposal, and Jack would be more than happy to help you out with any process or any process issues that you might have getting that feature request through.
Yeah, I'm glad that we've kind of segued onto this topic, because I wanted to just bring that up again. Yeah, we are, everything that we're doing is ultimately governed by the DAO. We have, as I've said, any of you can become a voting member of the DAO by going through this neutral qualification process that we've designed. And anyone can submit a proposal to the DAO of any form, whether it's a protocol upgrade, a parameter change, or using the DAO's treasury to fund a specific project. So I'd like to actually plug a couple of the active proposals that you can chat about, and to give you an idea of how you guys can get involved. So we have obviously PIP 4, which is the consensus rule change, pasted a link in the protocols channel. We have another proposal which was just published a couple of days ago, or 1 day ago, sorry, which is actually very relevant now that we're changing to protobuf. Someone has proposed to build a Python client and to be funded by the DAO for that. And then the third proposal I'd like to plug, although this has been rescinded at the moment, is the discussion about new blockchains that we want to support for service and ultimately whitelist for revenue. The proposal itself has been rescinded, but there will be another proposal to use the DAO treasury to fund a bootstrapping program that will reward nodes for supporting some of these new chains. So keep an eye out for that. Check out the proposals channel that will have a constant stream of all of the discussions about anything that's going on, anything that we're trying to decide on. Yeah, I think we have a couple of other questions. Okay, so yeah, just on the non-custodial node running, I think there are a few people that would really like that feature. So I'd definitely bring that up in a proposal or discuss that in Discord or the forum to try and accelerate that along. We have a question for regarding governance from Eddie B. Andrew can maybe provide more details on this, specifically about the technical aspect of how the upgrade is activated. Does the upgrade use Cosmovisor or similar to switch the daemon at the upgrade height?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Luis may have answered it in the chat, but I'll say it here one more time. There's no daemon switching. You're on 6.0. It's an internal little switch, meaning that you need to switch the daemon yourself to release candidate 6.0. And release candidate 6.0 is backwards compatible, so it'll run today fine. In fact, I know a lot of our, fine with barring any bugs that might pop up. But I know a lot of node runners are already running it right now. And then after the upgrade height, it'll be seamless, meaning that you don't know the upgrade height passed, and now you're doing protobuf, right? And with that being said, before, just to reiterate, before the upgrade height, you will have to submit transactions using the legacy codec, true, and then after will be false. So keep an eye out for when the upgrade height is going to be, which again is something that's to be determined based on node support.
Yeah, so we'll be monitoring to see how many nodes or I guess how much validator power has updated to 0.6, which is why Luis asked or pointed out that it'd be great. Could you repeat that again, Luis? Sorry, I just want to make sure I don't get the details wrong. About exposing V1 or something.
Yeah, so V1 is an endpoint on Pocket Core, which is your node URL, the port /V1 that displays the version that your Pocket Core node is running. What I said was that I would like to tell everyone to keep that endpoint open so we can automatically check how much validator power has upgraded to 6.0 so far.
So, and once we know that 66% of validator power has updated, then we can comfortably go ahead and edit pip4 to specify an upgrade height. And then we can start the rest of the process, which is to basically just have the voting members of the DAO approve or reject the upgrade, and then have the foundation submit the upgrade transaction to officially activate it on chain.
Yep, that's correct. I didn't know if there was a question in there, Jack, but I think you covered it, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to reiterate because we've covered a lot of topics, and those are the sort of I guess action items for all of the node runners moving forward. So there's a lot of discussion going on in community calls, but these seem to be intended for off call asynchronous discussions. So. I think unless
quick. We had Ben Van raise his hand.
Yeah, real quick. Luis, when you say open V1, are you talking on 26656, 26657? Are you saying open the whole channel or just that endpoint?
No, just that endpoint for the Pocket RPC, which by default is the 8081. And those with HTTPS are running it in 443. But what I meant was the route, the /V1 route, which is the root route of all of the Pocket RPC inputs.
Okay, I'll talk to you offline, and once I confirm what to do, I'll put a post up in Node Runner just to make sure everyone knows how to do it. Cool.
Thanks. I was literally just in the process of typing to ask if someone could write that down, because then we can integrate that into the upgrade overview so that everyone has full visibility of what they need to do. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for that. So do we have any more questions, or can we start to think about wrapping things up?
We have one more question from yeah.
Hamish, we've invited you to speak. I think you need to accept something on your end.
There we go. Never done this before. Never seen it in Discord before. Hey, quick question about automation. I have an application that it provides all the tools, for people to create their nodes and set them validating and doing all that fun stuff. And obviously, I have to code into it when we call that pocket node stake, command. And I think there's another command as well, which requires you to explicitly set the codec to true or the legacy to true or false. Obviously, right now, all my code broke. Upgrading to version 6, since there's that breaking change, I now have to explicitly pass in the codec. If I'm going to send this to customers and have people using the software, how can I automate? How can I know when to update that legacy codec? Or do I just have to, send it out, and then once the DAO votes on their thing, then push an upgrade to all my users, and then to watch for a block height? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to automate this.
So that's a great question. Thank you so much. And before before I actually tell you my suggestion on how to do that automation, I want to tell you that internally we're having a lot of discussions in terms of orchestration for the Pocket Core nodes. So expect more news on that, either via the forum or Discord. So you can also participate in the conversation since you're interested. But the easiest way to do this will be to monitor for the upgrade parameter. And remember, there is a CLI command and also an RPC function that is called params. And params is going to tell you the exact list of parameters. And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's one that allows you to get a particular param by its key, right?
It depends if you're doing the CLI or RPC, I believe. But in any case, you can see the value.
Yeah, exactly.
You might need to parse the JSON, but
exactly. So you can get the params, get all the params. We can tell you exactly in which there is a key that is called upgrade, and you can monitor for changes in that key. Once and actually because testnet is upgraded, I can show you what it looks like before and after. So you can actually code for the different values that it's going to have a before and after the upgrade. So you can automatically check for the param, and before you send the transaction, you can set the codec based on the value.
That is perfect. When are you going to publish that?
You mean the param? I'll paste it right now in NodeRunner.
Yeah, the parameter name and the key that we should be looking for.
Yeah, awesome. I'll paste it in NodeRunner. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That answers my question. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and for complete clarity, guys, the 6.0 legacy codec parameter is something that really only makes sense for during the upgrade process. And after, it kind of makes sense to have a new release where it doesn't use, like you can't really use the legacy codec anymore, because frankly, it will always fail after the upgrade height. This was supposed to be a UX thing so that you can have a seamless piece of software that doesn't have to be switched dynamically as soon as that height passes. Of course, it comes with these sort of inconveniences. So I'm sorry about that, Amish Batman in particular, the automated, but Luis is completely right. You can actually see the exact height the upgrade will happen, and you'll be able to determine whether or not you are before or after, so you can use the legacy codec feature. Now, I don't know if it's going to cause you more of a headache when I release, 6.1 or 6.2, or when we release 6.1 or 6.2, and it doesn't have the legacy codec anymore. But hopefully you can just go back to your, you can update your API or something of that nature. So it's for complete clarity, guys, the legacy codec is a temporary measure because after the upgrade, there's no point of using the legacy codec anymore.
Awesome. Any more questions from anyone? Nope.
We don't have any more questions. I just want to take a moment to thank Andrew and Luis for all the work and the rest of the team, the protocol team for this, and everyone for coming. Seriously, thank you for taking the time to jump in here.
Yeah, and thanks for everyone for being a part of the call, because ultimately, this sort of communication and direct interaction with the community is what kind of fuels the next releases and makes our implementation a little bit more curated, because that's kind of what we're going for here. And ultimately, you guys are Pocket Network, so after a while, the team will hopefully become community contributors, et cetera. So I really appreciate all the tooling everyone's building, like the Block Explorer, everything Coder is out, everything on Coder, and frankly, it sounds like a product, Amish Batman there too. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see. Really pleased to see so many people show up on the call. and excited to hopefully have a lot of you guys get more involved in the DAO. And yeah, I feel like this is the start of more momentum building for the ecosystem as a whole.
Yep. And oh, you got it, Jack.
Yeah, I just saw Pat's message. So yeah, very relevant to a lot of the discussions we were having on the call about peering. Ben Van, who has been quite active on the call today, is actually going to be hosting another call next Tuesday, exactly the same time, about peering. We'll be, I guess, Sean, do you want to come on and maybe just give a quick overview of, I'll invite you to speak of what we'll be chatting about next week.
Yeah, I'm just gonna kind of do a general overview on how gossip works and the kind of problems that gossip protocols run into, like we're currently experiencing at certain levels, and give some really actually direct advice, configuration instructions for people who wish to optimize their setup so that they're not blasting the network unnecessarily. And I have basically 3 different plans depending on what type of node provider you are, from a single provider to somebody with 10 or 20 to people with 1,000 nodes. The big providers are strongly suggested to attend and get this concept, because I think we can reduce the amount of traffic on this network by at least 10x with some rather simple steps. And that will help us scale significantly. So stop by next week, same time. I will be, obviously I'll publish afterward, and I'm on the Node Runner channel all the time. So, but if you're, it's also, I mean, even single providers, in fact, even definitely single node runners, want to know how best to configure themselves and what they can do to help the network. So that's it.
Yeah, and frankly,
Yeah.
I've seen a first draft of the of the presentation, guys, and it's very illuminating. And frankly, I feel like this community effort could actually yield more tangible results than our everything that we propose in Pub 4. So I would highly, highly recommend attendance and give really just give like your full attention to this sort of thing, because it is all about network health, and it'll ensure that we don't run into the foreseen 5K validator issues that we're kind of dancing around today.
Yeah, where this week was about refining and hardening protocol level coordination, on-chain coordination. Next week will be all about off-chain social coordination, how we can all be better node runners, best practices we can adopt, etc. So just as important.
Cool. Be there or be square.
Oh yeah, and in terms of RSVPing, head over to the calendar channel and just click the green arrow on the event. I'll post a message link in community calls channel to make it easy, and the bot will message you guys next week to remind you that the call is taking place. Awesome. Yeah, we have a question here about doing the calls earlier. I think that's a fair point. This call was specified to be this time because we have some Australian node runners who were keen to attend. But yeah, I think that's a fair point. That's something that we need to try and figure out, because we are a global ecosystem. So yeah, we definitely hear you, Shane. And we made the peering call for next week the same time. just to make it easier. Yeah, that will always be something that we're looking to make sure that we're getting right. And as Alberto and Mike are saying, we'll be recording calls as well. So yeah, on the subject of docs, which is now being brought up, we are going to, as a team, try to incorporate all of the new insights that came up on the call, all of the takeaways, any additional nuances about the process, about what you guys need to do to upgrade your node, etc., and incorporate those into the mainnet upgrade overview doc that's on the forum. So just make sure to keep an eye on that for the single source of truth on all things 0.6 upgrade. And if you have any further questions, just shoot a message to Node Runner or anywhere else really, or even better, in response to that post in discourse.
Awesome. Big thanks to Jack for setting all this up. Big thanks to Luis for helping me present this. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we can close the call now.
Yeah, I think we're good. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
See you on the network. Bye bye.